Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. And the all-overarching theme this week, the second wave of the world economic depression is now upon us. The second wave of the world derivatives depression started as a banking panic in 2007, 2008, and then there was a period of relative calm as the dust settled. And now just as the confidence in the United States that the recovery has started and that the bubbles can be launched again, we've got the attack of the hedge funds on Greece. And make no mistake, this is not a Greek crisis. This is hedge fund mayhem. This is the hedge funds against world civilization. The hedge funds are attacking Greece. They wish to destroy the market for Greek government bonds. They want to destroy the credit rating of Greece. And they've now succeeded, as of this morning, in forcing a bailout of Greece. So it's Friday, April 23rd here in Washington, D.C., and this morning in Europe, the Greek government, the British puppet Papandreou, from a long line of British puppet prime ministers in Greece, going back, you can think of the British in Greece after World War II. It was part of their occupation zone, so to speak. This Papandreou has now called on the European Union and the International Monetary Fund to activate the $56 billion or so which the European Union and the IMF have earmarked for Greece. And we have the disastrous, pathetic Frau Merkel of Germany, who now says, no, well, we've got to wait because we want to impose International Monetary Fund conditionalities, drastic, deadly austerity, absolute crushing of the Greek standard of living. That has got to come first before this money is paid out. The thing that occasions this is a leak or revelation, probably inspired by one of the hedge funds, the locust funds, as they're known in some places in Europe, that the Greek deficit is actually bigger than had previously been thought. The previous report was that the Greeks had a deficit equal to 12.7% of their GDP, but now it's 13.6% of the GDP of Greece is represented by a budget deficit. Now remember, GDP is a worthless figure because it includes everything. It includes derivatives. It includes speculation. It probably includes a good deal of drug money laundering, not just for Greece, but for everywhere, starting with the U.S. So this is all baloney, and it's inspired by the hedge funds. The other news, of course, is that now the ratings agencies, Moody's has downgraded Greece for the second time. And as a result of the Moody's downgrade, Greek bonds, if the Greek government wants to borrow money and sell bonds, they've got to pay 11.5% interest. And that is up for 8% last week. Just 7-10 days ago, the Greeks could borrow at 8%, but now they've got to pay 11.5%. The hedge funds, the hyenas, the jackals are circling Greece. And, of course, the idea is that this is an attack on the euro. The euro is big enough and the markets have enough depth so that it's hard even for a fleet of hedge funds, a school of predatory sharks calling themselves hedge funds. It's hard for them to attack the euro directly. So they do it through Greece, and, of course, they're preparing parallel attacks on Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Italy, the so-called PIGS group, right? P-I-I-G-S. This is a disgusting term invented in the degenerate bowels of Goldman Sachs. Before we leave Moody's, let me say, Moody's should be in jail. Standard & Poor's should be in jail. And Fitch should be in jail. We just had hearings this week in front of the Carl Levin Committee of the U.S. Congress, and there we found that, of course, these wonderful hedge funds that are so highly respected and so prestigious, they are corrupt as the day is long, and they were looking for bribes and kickbacks and patronage back in 2008 when it was up to them to rate the reliability of various mortgage-backed securities and various collateralized debt obligations and so forth, and they simply failed. They did not provide timely information about the actual situation of the U.S. derivatives bubble. While there was still money to be made, the hedge funds were implementing, they were facilitating all of that. We now have the following dilemma for all sovereign governments in the world. You better downgrade Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's, and you better downgrade them into jail because of their corruption and their malfeasance and nonfeasance. Remember that in the United States, Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's have a quasi-legal role. They're, in some ways, you can consider them an appendage of the U.S. government in the sense that the ratings that they put out have a kind of official validity, which they have no business having. They should be stripped of that immediately, and criminal prosecutions need to be begun against Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. The question, therefore, is the following. Either the sovereign governments of the world will act against Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's and put some of them in jail, or if these criminal enterprises under the RICO statute are allowed to continue, then they will turn around and downgrade the debt of the sovereign countries, starting with Greece, but then going on to Ireland, Italy, Spain, Portugal. Pretty soon it'll be California, New York, and then, of course, it'll be the British will get theirs at some point, and then the U.S. will be it. Remember also, Japan is probably the most heavily indebted country of all of the big ones. The Japanese debt burden is simply immense. And the same thing goes for these hedge funds. If the sovereign states representing the main peoples of the world do not act against these hedge funds, to shut them down, to regulate them, to tax them, to investigate them, to use all of those sovereign powers that are now lying fallow, then the hedge funds will destroy world civilization. And that's what's going on before your eyes. The hedge funds, of course, are the cruisers and the destroyers and the torpedo boats that sail out in front of the battleships of speculation, right? The despicable, infamous Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. But then, of course, the aircraft carriers, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Citibank, always on the verge of bankruptcy with Pandit the Bandit, and, of course, the rest of them, the various Bank of New York, Mellon, and so forth. Now, remember, the crisis in Greece doesn't start in Greece. It starts from meetings in New York City. Last autumn, noticing the fall of the dollar, the idea in the mind of Soros and others was, well, there's not much you can do to make the dollar look good, but you can do a great deal to make the euro look relatively bad. So make the euro look as bad as you can. And we've reported here in detail on the infamous meeting, the idea dinner that was held in Manhattan, February 8th, by Moness, Crespi, Hart, and Company, the boutique research and brokerage firm. And this was reported then in the Wall Street Journal Friday, February 26th. It's written up in detail on my indispensable website, tarpley.net. And we'll get back to those hedge funds in just a minute.